We have Ephraim Mattos in with us, and Ephraim was with us a couple months ago, I think. And he has put out a new book called City of Death, Humanitarian Warriors in the Battle of Mosul.
Yes.
Welcome. Glad you're here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back on.
You bet. So tell me a little bit about the battle and recap where we've been together before with this book. So tell the story.
Okay, so last time I was on, we talked about the book and we talked about the Nazarene Fund. So the book is about a journey I basically went on last year, humanitarian work I did in northern Iraq to help with the fight against ISIS. So as a former SEAL, it was a natural fit for me to go and help. And now I originally thought I was just going to be doing, the standard humanitarian thing of handing out water bottles, doing a little bit of medical aid. Well, when I got in there, the team I was with, a group called the Free Burma Rangers, we ended up embedding with the Iraqi army and basically becoming their frontline medical support because they just don't have the resources to do that themselves. And so I was not a medic; I was a sniper, but I had pretty good medical training from my time as a SEAL. And so we actually ended up being involved in the direct assault into Mosul to open up the Western Front in Mosul and finally collapse the caliphate in Mosul. And we were in the city for about 30 days. From the day that we entered the city to the day that I ended up getting shot on a rescue mission, it was exactly 30 days. And what happened in Mosul was it was something I thought I would never see in my lifetime. You see evil, you see pictures of World War II, you see killing fields, you see these black and white photos, and you think, I'll never see something like that. There's a certain amount of denial that you have. Well, I saw it, and it was real. And so in City of Death, I talk about my experience of going in there and sort of being caught off guard with the amount of violence and the fighting that was happening, but more importantly, the acts of heroism on the side of the Iraqi army and of the other guys I was with. It was amazing to see these guys laying down their lives for others.
Give us an example of that black and white film and then the heroism around it.
So yeah, you look at old World War II photos, right? You got these black and white pictures of killing fields. Well, on June 2nd of last year, it was early morning, and we saw a fresh killing field. We were literally at the very, very front edge of the Iraqi army advance, and we looked out into this what had used to have been a 6-lane highway through the city. It was completely rubbled and mortar holes, and it was completely rubbled. But we started seeing bodies. We started seeing bodies of dead kids, elderly people. There was a man in a wheelchair slumped over. He'd been executed. And we started seeing dozens and dozens of bodies. And so in City of Death, I talk about how we got up there, we saw what was happening, but as bad as it was, we saw people still alive in the bodies. There were children walking around and unwounded, and they were in shock. And they'd been out there for about 36 hours at this point. And their dead relatives are everywhere, and they're going around from body to body trying to find water, trying to find food. And so we saw 4 kids alive and 2 wounded men slumped up against a wall in a pile of about 20 bodies. The most grotesque, terrible thing you can imagine.
Why did they do this? Why were all these people executed at the end?
These people were executed because they were leaving the caliphate. These were people who had endured more than likely the full 3 years of the ISIS occupation in Mosul, and they were done. They wanted to leave. They wanted to get out of there because as the noose was tightening around the neck of ISIS, supplies and food and water were becoming more and more scarce. And so ISIS was stealing all that from the civilians. And so living behind the ISIS wall in Mosul was absolute hell for these people. So they tried to break free and run away. And so when these people ran away as a large group, ISIS massacred, I think that day there was more than 150 people just slaughtered in the street because they went right by the ISIS headquarters.
How did the ISIS people, I've heard that they've kind of gone back in, they've just kind of morphed back into a lot of society. Is that true?
We did come across a lot of guys trying to blend in with society and kind of get out of there. And that has happened. So ISIS is definitely having a bit of a resurgence in Iraq right now. So they went underground. and it was neighbors and just people who've all lived together, right? So these guys blend in. They're from the city of Mosul. ISIS, that's where these guys are from. And so they were able to blend back into society, a lot of them. And so now we're seeing a bit of a resurgence. However, the guys that we were seeing toward the end of the fight in Mosul, a lot of these guys were actually white European guys, a lot of Chechens and things like that. And the reason for that is because they have no choice but to fight and die. They can't assimilate back into society. They can't run away because they look like me. They're white guys, red beards, and they can't get away. So those guys had to fight it out all the way to the end, and they know they're going to die, and they just didn't care. And so, yeah.
So you went from that to saying I've got to keep doing this, and that brought you to Burma, right?
Yes.
And now you're working with the Nazarene Fund in Burma.
Yes.
And last we talked, you were the only one in Burma, and you started telling us about what was really happening. And you have an update for us.
Yes, absolutely. So also to clarify, I'm not the only one working in Burma. I'm the only one from the Nazarene Fund working in Burma.
You were telling me that you were trying to organize a bunch of people.
Yes.
And you were going to bring them all together.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I just got back from a trip about a week and a half ago, and I met with a lot of the tribal leaders and the guys who run stuff across the border, and they are beyond ecstatic to have the Nazarene Fund's help.
Okay, now this is a group of Christians?
Yes, about 50% Christian, about 50% Buddhist.
Okay.
All the leaders it's called the Karen tribe, and they are, all of their leaders, about 90% of their leaders are Christian. So every time I meet with them, we pray at the beginning and at the end, and it's a really, really good thing. And so I met with these guys, and I explained to them like what we can do, and I'd already been working in there. I'd already done several trips with the Nazarene Fund in there, and they are beyond ecstatic to have us because when I was there, literally while I was there, the Burma Army just moved in 350 more troops to attack their positions, to attack the civilians in Karen State. So we just saw what happened last year with the Rohingya, and then the Burma Army moved all of those same troops up to the north to attack the Kachin, another ethnic group. And so now they're starting to bring troops down to attack the Karen, and that's where we're there on the ground helping keep people alive.
So why are they doing this? Why are they doing this to these tribes?
It's an ethnic thing. It's a racist thing. Is essentially what it is. It goes back 1,000 years of the ethnic Burmans who control the Irrawaddy Valley, sort of in the center of Burma. They want to control all the highlands. They want to control the entire region. And so if you're a different ethnicity, they'll let you live there, but you have to be sort of a subject serf class. You have to basically serve the Burmans. And also for example, like the Karen, they live in the hills, and the Karen hills are full of natural resources. So there's a lot of that going on. Plus, they don't like you because you're Christian, right? That just adds a whole nother level of hatred, because Christians don't put up with being oppressed. They don't put up with it because where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty, right? And so because of that, the Burma Army attacks them even more.
Tell me what you brought me.
So I brought with me several photos. 1 second.
Do we have somebody? Where is Marissa? You just passed it there.
I apologize.
That's
Thank
okay.
you. So I brought with me several photos of what I see all the time when I go to these places. And these are I brought with me photos. Sorry. Of one particular attack that happened. This is actually this is from 2010, right? So it seems like a long time ago, but these are the only photos that they were able to get out to me. I was asking these guys, I was like, hey, I need photos of what's happening and what's going on. And in these photos, you see dead civilians, you see kids dead, a baby, and these are not accidental collateral damage. These are intentional executions of these people.
Some of these are kids. That's a
baby. That's a baby. Intentionally killed. And that baby didn't die right away. It survived for about 24 hours and then died.
And this just looks like it's in the woods.
Yeah, they're out in the jungle. These people have nothing, and the Burma Army still wants to attack them and take more from them. And so every time I go there, every time the Nazarene Fund shows up, we're stopping that from happening. And I'll tell you a quick story. Back in May, I was there, and I can't divulge exactly what we were for security operations, exactly what was happening. Suffice it to say, we saved a lot of people's lives. And a villager who had been pushed out of his home by the Burma army, him and his family had fled the Burma army, and they built a new hut out in the jungle in the middle of nowhere. He heard that the Nazarene Fund was there, and he came and found me, and he said, "Hey, I want to thank you. Please come to my house for dinner tonight." So they get me on a motorcycle, and I drive to this man's house in the middle of nowhere. When I get in there, his wife is cooking pig fat for me to eat, because they have pig fat and rice and bamboo leaves. And so we're sitting there, and he's like, "Hey, I wish I had more to give you." He's like, "This is all I have for a snack." And he pulls out a bag, and it's literally tree bark. It's bark from a tree. And he's like, "This is all we have to snack on while my wife prepares food." And he gave me tree bark to eat. And I'm sitting there chewing on tree bark with this guy, and he has nothing. He has literally nothing. And he wanted to give me tree bark because that was the best that he had. And so I'm sitting there chewing on tree bark with this man. And I was so overcome. I was just like, his gratitude, the level of gratitude he showed for us, for the Nazarene Fund being there, it was unbelievable. It was so touching. And then later on, as I was leaving the jungle, another man barely speaks any English. I'm on a motorcycle, and he's driving me out of the jungle. And as he's driving, he turns to me, he says, "Thank you." And I said, "Oh, good English. What?" I'm trying to pimp him and talk more about, use more English. And so I was like, "Oh, what are you grateful for?" Or what, you know?
Yeah.
And he said, "This is amazing." He said, "Thank you for giving my people hope." That's what he says to me. This kid who's maybe 19 years old. They know nothing but slaughter and massacre and these terrible things, but we're there to bring hope, and we're there to bring help. And it's an honor to be there. It's an honor to represent the Nazarene Fund. It's an honor to do what I do. Every time we go out, we save people's lives, and it's an incredible thing. And we keep things like those photos that you're looking at. You can't even show them. We keep things like that from happening.
Torn on. It doesn't become real to people until they see it, and then you don't want to show it because it's awful. It's awful. It's horrifying. And I don't know what to do with them. I think I'm not sure, but I think we have them on the NazareneFund.org. If people want to go over there and see firsthand what's happening, I believe they're up there. If they're not, I'll make sure that they get on there today. They're over there. Yeah, don't go for if you I mean it's their children and a baby, and it's not pretty. But if it will help you wake up to what's happening, if it will help you wake someone else up, then please go. But we would sure appreciate your help. The Nazarene Fund has turned into this global thing that is just remarkable, and countries all around the world now know its name as a beacon of hope. And
indeed,
we are thrilled that you're part of it. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for letting me be a part of it. It's an incredible honor to do what I do.
Your book is well worth the read if you want to know and be put into it, but put into it for a good reason. I mean, here's a guy who, was a Navy SEAL and says, I can do more. It's called The City of Death, and it's available everywhere now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Glenn.
God bless.